the Gemara. ורבי ישמעאל אומר, 3 אסורות, 2 מותרות. So says the Gemara, this is Rabbi Yishmael, the way we had it yesterday, that if you have 3, it will be asur. If you have 2, it will be mutar. And says the Gemara, Rabbi Yishmael, 2 mutarot. Rabbi Yishmael holds 2 stones next to the markolis is mutar. We learned that even 2 is going to be asur. V'hatani Rabbi Yishmael omer 2 betifisa alo asurot, 3 afilu bemeruchakot asurot. We learned in a Braita, different than this, 1 step more stringent. And that Rabbi Yishmael holds, if you have 2 stones next to the markolis, is asur b'tefisa. Tefisa means, normally speaking, Rashi says tefisa is like 1 grab. It means it's close and 6 feet away within 4 amot. But shalosh, if you have 3 stones, then the Braita says Rabbi Yishmael holds even meruchakot, even if it's farther, it would be asur. So now we've got a problem. We mentioned that Rabbi Yishmael holds 2 stones is going to be mutar. Only 3 is asur, because 3 resembles the markolis that was made also out of 3 stones. But 2 is not a problem. Now this Braita says, if there's 2 stones next to the markolis is asur, within 4 amot, and if it is 3, then even if it's more than 4 amot, still is going to be asur. So which one is it? Amar Rava. Rava said, look, Kasha, it's not a question. Kan betifisa achat, kan bishte tfisot. One of them is in tfisa achat, and the other one is in shte tfisot. What does that mean? One is when it's very close, tfisa achat, 1 distance, close, and the other one is 2 step removed. It's 2 tfisot. And what does that mean, the Gemara says? Vehechidami. What does it mean, 2 tefisot? The ika gova beni ubeni. That there is something tall dividing between the main markolis and these stones that are next to it. So this way, if you have something tall that is dividing them, we will not say that these stones fell from the markolis, and hence, in that case, it only would be asur if it's 3 stones, because then it will be a miniature markolis that they built there. And remember, that's the shita of Rabbi Yishmael. Rabbi Yishmael holds that of the Avodah Zarah of markolis, they would make miniature markolises next to the big main one. Right? That was the whole machloket. So if you have something that's dividing between the markolis and these stones, then you can't say these stones fell from the main markolis. And therefore, if it's only 2, it's not the structure. It's only when it's 3, then it's asur, because we'll say, oh, this is a miniature markolis by itself. But if you don't have this divider, then even if you have 2, we'll say, well, this is part of what fell from markolis, because nothing stops it, there's no divider, and therefore it would be asur within 4 amot, even if you have 2 stones. And that explains perfectly what the shita of Rabbi Yishmael is. So what's his shita? If you see a markolis, a big main markolis there, and within 4 amot you have 2 stones, no divider, asur. Because we imagine that he fell from it. And if you have 3, even if it's farther, still will be asur, because that will be also a miniature markolis that they built. And if you have a divider, only if you have 3, it would be asur, because that would be a miniature markolis. But by 2, it will be no resemblance to Avodah Zarah, and hence it will be mutar. So says the Gemara, umarkolis. This is the question that has been on everybody's mind. You're passing on a path, and you see 3 stones like laying around, no structure, no build-up, no tzura, and you'll tell yourself, oh, this is markolis. Well, every 3 stones is markolis. I thought markolis has to be built in a structure that we explained. And the Gemara so far, from the beginning of the Perek, has not mentioned this. Right? We said it because we needed it for understanding of the Gemara. But now the Gemara actually says it. Umarkolis ki agavna mi heavy. If you have just 3 stones laying around, is that markolis? V'hatanya, we learned in the Braita, eluhen avne bet kolis. How is it the structure of markolis? Achad mikan, ve'achad mikan, ve'achad al gabehen. You have to have one next to the another one, and the third one on top of them. So that's the way markolis works, not just any 3 stones that's laying around. Amar Rava, Kitanya ahi beikar markolis. Rava is mechadish, a very important halacha here. Says yes, when you have the actual markolis, and we alluded to this yesterday as well, that you have the actual markolis and then there are miniature markolises. So when you have the actual Avodah Zarah markolis, the big one, it always has to be structured, 2 on the bottom, 1 on top of them, to indicate markolis. But once you have that, when you're building a miniature markolis, as long as it is 3 stones, even if they're not positioned like the markolis would be, even if you put them next to each other, adjacent to each other on the ground, that already does the association for Uvdei Avodah Zarah markolis, and that's enough. You don't always have to have it positioned in the structure of 1 on top of 2 of the main markolis. So Amarava Kitanya hi beikar markolis. Beyanai Malka Harav. Now the Gemara says a story that happened. Yanai HaMelech's house was destroyed by Uvdei Avodah Zarah. Atu Uvdei Kochavim, the servers of markolis came. Okimu be markolis. They made a massive Avodah Zarah markolis. They made the house of Yanai HaMelech to a bet Avodah Zarah. They made a big markolis over there. Atu Uvdei Kochavim acharini. Then it was captured by other Uvdei Avodah Zarah who denied markolis. They did not serve markolis. They not parchi lemarkolis. Shaklinhu vechifu ba'en derachim. They took all these stones of markolis and they used them for making roads. Right? They made them drachim vesartiaot. Sartiaot are just larger pathways between the 2 cities. Not small derech, but more of a mesila. So says the Gemara, Ikarabanan de Parshi, Ikarabanan de lo Parshi. It was a machloket, it was a divide between Chachamim. Some Chachamim stopped walking on those pathways because they felt it was made out of Avodah Zarah. They didn't go on it. And others, they did. So now, what do? Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan paskin da halacha by saying a story. So what do you want? Benan shel kedoshim alech alehen. Even the son of the holy people, Benan shel kedoshim, this holy individual, he passes on top of them. You want to be mahmir va'anan nifrosh, man? And we are going to be more mahmir than Benan shel kedoshim? So says the Gemara, who is this Benan shel kedoshim? Who is Benan shel kedoshim? Ma niruhu Benan shel kedoshim? Rabbi Menachem Rabbi Simai. This is Rabbi Menachem ben Rabbi Simai. Ve'amai karu le Benan shel kedoshim. Why would they call him such a holy person? Why was he a holy person? De'afilu betzurata dezuza lo mistakel. That he would not even gaze at a picture on a coin. Now the Tosafot over here right away asks, says, wait a second, that makes him a holy person? It's asur to look at statues. We mentioned this before. The Tosafot says it, the Chinuch writes this, many others, that al tifnu el ha'elilim means you cannot look at a statue of Avodah Zarah. And it's surah, and an image that is bolet, that it has a depth to it, it sticks out, that is like his statue. So that should be asur to look at. And keeping a halacha should not make you a holy man necessarily. You're not any different than any other person. So how in the world is that Benan shel kedoshim? Isn't it asur to look at a tzura on a matbea, on a coin? And the Tosafot says no. perhaps is different than a regular statue. Because a regular statue, when you look at it, it gives you an impression and you're impressed by it. That's asur. But a coin that everybody, hands from hand to hand, you deal with it on a daily basis, nobody associates the coin with anything impressive. So you don't look at the coin and say, So that is midat chasidut for him, that he even didn't gaze at that. Of course, as we mentioned before, histaklut does not mean seeing, it means gazing, it means a riyah behitbonenut. When you look at something with attention, with a depth of a look, a gazing, what we would call it in English, that's what the Magen Avraham and many other poskim say. We spoke about this in the Monday night shiur the other week at length, but nevertheless, the Benan Shel Kedoshim over here, Rabbi Menachem, Rabbi Simai, did not even gaze at the Tzura of a Matbea. So he's a holy person that is so careful in Ilchot Avodah Zarah, and he even did not stop himself from going on this pathway which was paved by Avnei Markolis. So that's the Rabbi Yochanan. So now the Gemara says the obvious question. Says the Gemara, my Tama demand the parish. If even Rabbi Menachem and Rabbi Simai, by the way, why was he called Benan Shel Kedoshim? Just say a Kadosh. Why Benan Shel Kedoshim? The Tosafot Pesachim explains that his father also was a Kadosh, and it seems from the Tosafot that it means there's a halacha in Hilchot Kivud Avayim that if you want something of if you are a respectful person and your father they want to give you kavod, you hang that kavod on your father, right? As much as possible, you associate your kavod with your father, and that's what the Gemara is doing also, because his father also was a holy person. They calls him Benan Shel Kedoshim. But the truth is, the simple understanding of the Gemara does not have to be any question, because you call a person that learns Torah a Ben Torah, right? That's his thing is defined. So he's a Ben Kedusha. He is a person that's defined by his Kedusha. It's not necessarily talking about his father. If you want to go homiletic, you could say that a lot of the Kedusha of children depends on their father and mother. When the Torah machzeret al achzanya shela, you have the Torah always developed in holy families in that way. So many times you have Benan Shel Kedoshim really referring to the parents being people of holy stature as well. But be that as it may, if he didn't feel that he has to be machmir, so why should we be? What is the svara of those chachamim that didn't want to walk on these paved stones, that the stones were taken from Markolis? Right? Markolis is an Avodah Zarah that is a stone. People served stones. So he took this, and now you paved the streets. What should be the halacha? Before we even see the Gemara, what should be the halacha? We mentioned before that if a goy has an Avodah Zarah and then he breaks it, what happens to the Avodah Zarah? Nullified. The Avodah Zarah is nullified. If the goy himself disrespects his deity, then there is no respect to be had. He just nullified his Avodah Zarah. A Jew is a whole different story. A Jew cannot nullify his Avodah Zarah. It stays, even if you break it, the pieces stay. Asur ba'anah, you cannot drive any benefit from. But a goy could. And now, in the story of the Gemara, what happened? In the story of the Gemara, these people who built this statue, the statue, not really, the structure of Markolis, they served. Then they were conquered by other goyim who did not believe in Markolis, and they destroyed it. So a goy could destroy an Avodah Zarah of a goy of his friend. So halachically, based on what we have so far seen, should be what? Mutar. So what in the world is a logic that some chachamim did not want to walk in this path because it was paved by broken pieces of Markolis, of this statue structure of Avodah Zarah? And here, it's important to note that, as we mentioned before, there are two concepts. There's a concept of Avodah Zarah being Asur B'Hana'ah itself, which you could nullify the Avodah Zarah, as we just mentioned. But then there is a concept of Tikrovet Avodah Zarah. Something that was brought as an offering for Avodah Zarah can never be nullified. Can never be nullified. And that is learned from a pasuk. Because the pasuk compares the Tikrovet Avodah Zarah, the offerings of Avodah Zarah, to Zivchei Metim, to a corpse. A corpse could never be nullified. By the way, this becomes a whole question. Tiferet Yisrael speaks about this. Can you do business with the mummies? Right? If you say that they're corpses, and a corpse always stays Asur B'Hana'ah, so can you do business with these things, right? It becomes a whole question, and this is from hundreds of years ago already, was a discussion. Nothing major has changed. Still, there's a market for these things, and you're talking about multi-million-dollar industries and so on and so forth. So again, this could be a very relevant thing actually, but the pasuk compares dealing with tikrovet avodah zarah, with anything that has been offered to Avodah Zarah, like a halacha of a corpse that you cannot derive any benefit from at any given point in time. We mentioned this, by the way, as a reference to a tumult that was created about 30 years ago, and then about 10 years ago again, it resurfaced of the Indian temples of Avodah Zarah, and what they do over there in terms of tikrovet avodah zarah, if the custom that some Hindus have by letting their hair grow for years, and then coming every year, you have over 1.5 million of Hindus that they come to their temples to offer their hair, to cut. There's a ritual that they have, and then at some point the temples figured that they could make some good money from a hair industry. Whether or not shaitels come from that, shaitels don't come from that, with hechsher, without the whole tumult that existed, especially became a very very touchy and sensitive topic a number of years ago. That involves this. Because if you say that this is tikrovet avodah zarah, and the Gemara develops, we'll talk about this more. If you say it's tikrovet avodah zarah, then there is nothing to do about it, really. You can't be nullifying it. You cannot do much about it in the hand of the goyim. So that would be part and parcel of this. So let's learn it inside the Gemara. Says the Gemara, what is the svara of those who are stringent and did not want to walk on this path? Savar laki amar Rav Gidel amar Rav Chia bar Yosef. He held like this svara of Rav Gidel in the name of Rav Chia bar Yosef, in the name of Rav. Minayin letikrovet avodah zarah avodat kochavim she'ela betela olamit. How do we know that tikrovet avodah zarah is never going to be batel? Shene'emar, as it says, Vayitzmedu leBaal Peor, by the Jews at the end of the 40 days in the midbar of the issue that they had with Benot Midian, Moav rather, and the worship of Baal Peor that happened over there. It says Vayisamedu leBaal Peor, Vayochlu zivchei metim. They did Avodah Zarah of Peor, Vayochlu zivchei metim. So he compares Avodah Zarah with a corpse, zivchei metim. Mamet en lo betela leolam. Just like a corpse is never batel, is always going to remain asur b'hana'ah, something you cannot derive any benefit from. Aftikrovet avodat kochavim en la betela leolam. Same would be with any offering of avodah zarah that would not be batel leolam, would not ever become nullified. So therefore you have this paved stones built from the markolis, it will be asur b'hana'ah, walking on it is benefiting from it, and hence it will be asur.
How is that tikrovet? That was markolis itself. We're not
okay, so that's a very good question. So there are two things, especially when you throw stones at it, right? Again, we mentioned that this was a very bizarre thing. You have to understand we don't have in our brains enough capacity to understand the mindset of the Avodah Zarah of yesteryear, because the way they served this specific Avodah Zarah, usually every Avodah Zarah, the way Tikrovet works is if you certain things, as the Gemara is going to explain, upcoming Gemarot, when you come and you slaughter, shecht something for it, that's Tikrovet Avodah Zarah. There's certain things that are certainly Avodah Zarah, for every Avodah Zarah. But then, there are unique types of deities, Avodah Zarahs, that they had, that they have their own specific way of service. For instance, Baal Peor was a very disgraceful type of service. You had to go expose yourself, and they would defecate in front of the Avodah Zarah. That would be actually, that was the most popular Avodah Zarah. We mentioned Rav Chaim Shlomo explains it, that this was like breaking any boundary for humanity. That I am so big that nothing is above me. I don't have to respect anything, even my deity. I don't have to respect. That was like that's the popularity of that Avodah Zarah. That it was the hardest thing to get rid of. But Marcolis, it was all about stone and earth and resemblance of the stars of direction and so on and so forth. So it was all about stones and ground, and hence part of its service would be you took a rock and you threw it in front of it, added, right? That was part. So although those things would be tikrovet avodah zarah, so it was used in the service of avodah zarah. Also, umandelo parish, amar baina ken panim veleka. So if you say that this is all tikrovet avodah zarah, and Rav holds that tikrovet avodah zarah never will be nullified, so now those people who were lenient and walked on this, what did they think? Is hafuch now. It should be asur, because the Gemara says because they felt that not everything becomes tikrovet avodah zarah. Tikrovet avodah zarah is a very specific category of halacha, and that's only the things that usually are brought in front of an avodah zarah. A stone is never brought inside the Beit HaMikdash for tikrovet. You have tikrovet korbanot, you have water, you have wine, you have other things of that nature, but you don't bring stones into Beit HaMikdash, into avodah of any sort. So therefore, that does not constitute tikrovet.
These are simple stones or stones?
Even simple stones.
Or stones with carving?
Simple stones. I mean, they have to have a certain shape maybe, but simple stones. So says the Gemara, Amar Rav Yosef bar Abba, Ikla Rabba bar Yirmiyah Latrin. This is going to be a structure that we see repeated in few lines from Gemara also. This same, chain of command. Amar Rav Yosef bar Abba. Rav Yosef bar Abba said, Ikla Rabba bar Yirmiyah Latrin. Rabba bar Yirmiyah came to our town, and he came and he brought a very difficult braita with himself. I mean, he came to ask something. He said, I have this question. I have asked this to everyone. No one could answer this. What was this question? If a goy brings some rocks from Marcolis, from this Avodah Zarah, and he paved the pathways with these stones. In other words, it was a goy himself, and he took an Avodah Zarah, destroyed the Avodah Zarah, and he used the pieces of it to pave the road. Mutar. You could use it, you could walk on it, no problem. The fact that this used to be 5 minutes ago a piece of Avodah Zarah, it's irrelevant. Even though that you can't use Avodah Zarah, this is nullified, you could use it. But if a Jew brings stones from Marcolis, then if he does the same exact thing and he destroys it and he paves the roads, is asur. Velet nagar ubar nagar deifrakina. Rabbi Arimia says, I have no idea. Why is this? Why is this the case that a goy that brings it, it becomes mutar, a yid that does it is asur? Amar Rav Sheshat, or Rav Sheshet, Ana lo nagar ana v'lo bar nagar. Nagar or bar nagar means a carpenter, a craftsman. And the association of that with learning is someone that's really an expert in putting things together, putting different brightas together and explaining it, fitting everything into one another, right? You find that the big Talmidei Chachamim of Eretz Yisrael in the time of Galut Yachin and Yoyakim were called also craftsmen, Charash u'masger, right? HaCharash u'masger, Charash means also a craftsman. Why are Talmidei Chachamim called like that? The Gemara explains, but nevertheless, it says, no Talmid Chacham could answer this. And Rav Sheshet says, I'm not a big Lamda necessarily, but I could answer you very easily. Uparkinale, my kashale, what's his problem? In other words, when he brings this and he is all tumbled up, that he doesn't know, Rabbi Bar Yirmiyah comes to the town and says, I don't understand this. You know what's bothering him? What's bothering Rabbi Bar Yirmiyah is a simple question, which is a legitimate question. He says, wait, Tikrovet Avodah Zarah has no bitul. You cannot nullify Tikrovet Avodah Zarah. So why do I care if a Jew made this or a Goy made this? It should be asur across the board. Even if a Goy comes and slices the stones and makes a paving for the road, still should be asur because it's Tikrovet Avodah Zarah, as we just learned. That's what's bothering him. Because he's correct. Tikrovet Avodah Zarah can never be nullified. He's correct. It is taka, a very bothersome question. But he missed one point, says Rav Sheshet. And that's the point that we just learned. That in order for it to be Tikrovet Avodah Zarah, it has to be something that is used usually as a Tikrovet. Stones never are Tikrovet. And hence, this is not Tikrovet Avodah Zarah. You know what it is? It is Avodah Zarah itself. It has the halachot, the normal halachot of Avodah Zarah. Now, normal halachot of Avodah Zarah, if a goy destroys his Avodah Zarah, what happens? It's nullified. It's mutar. The Jew could do whatever he wants with it. No problem. But a Yid, a Jew cannot make a nullification of his own Avodah Zarah. So says Rav Sheshet, it's a very simple thing. It's rather simple, nothing complicated. That's what the Gemara says. So it says, Anan lo nagarana v'lo bar nagarana u'parkinale my kushale. What's the question? The Rav Gidel, ba'ina ke'en panim veleka. His problem is that he thinks this is Tikrovet Avodah Zarah, but here, in this case, is not Tikrovet Avodah Zarah because it's stone, and it has to be something that's brought inside the Beit HaMikdash. As a Tikrovet, stones are never brought, and therefore, it would be mutar. Now, the next piece of Gemara is a digression, a tangent that has nothing to do really with our Masechta, but it's a continuation of this Braita that we just learned, and Be'ezrat Hashem,